At 4:11 a.m. on a Tuesday, I slipped out of the house. All I carried was a duffel bag and 22 years of suppressed fury. My brother had just received a brand new car for graduating college. Me, I got a bill for rent. That night, as my family toasted Caleb's success with champagne and congratulations, my father looked me dead in the eye and demanded $800 a month to continue living in the house where I'd been invisible my entire life. They expected me to smile, nod, and pay up like the meek little doormat I'd always been. Instead, I wrote them a letter. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a receipt for everything they'd taken from me. Then I vanished before sunrise. They thought they knew who I was. The overlooked child, the family disappointment, the one who'd always be there until I broke. They were about to learn they'd been dead wrong about all of it. Before we delve deeper into this unfolding story, if you find yourself drawn to tales of resilience, transformation, or simply appreciate narratives that reflect the raw, authentic facets of life, please consider subscribing. Your support helps bring more such stories to light. Now, let's get back to the journey. I should have known something was fundamentally wrong when my mother Eleanor asked me to set the good china for Sunday dinner. Our family, the Maxwells, reserved that particular set for only 2 occasions: Christmas and when someone was about to receive truly dreadful news. My world, at 22 years old, was about to crack open like an eggshell. Caleb. My older brother had always been the golden child of the family. He possessed the perfect blonde hair, the piercing blue eyes, the very embodiment of the son my father Arthur had always envisioned. I, on the other hand, with my unassuming brown hair and gray eyes, was consistently regarded as the exception. So, I was the quiet one, preferring the solace of a book in a forgotten corner to the boisterous family gatherings my father orchestrated. Everything Caleb did was met with effusive praise. From his brilliance in mathematics, despite the fact I spent countless hours tutoring him through his homework, to the various athletic achievements my father boasted about, even when those achievements were largely exaggerated. I vividly remember one instance Caleb accidentally shattered Grandmother Constance's antique porcelain vase. He simply uttered a casual, "My bad," and father immediately turned to me, asking if I would help him clean up the mess. I did, of course, and I was also the one who endured the lengthy lecture on carefulness and responsibility. I was perpetually assigned the burden of Caleb's mistakes, a silent scapegoat in our family's carefully constructed narrative. The unspoken rules within the Maxwell household were brutally simple. Caleb was eternally absolved of responsibility. Appearances were paramount, far more important than truth or integrity. And affection, true affection, was a conditional commodity dispensed only when one met father's impossibly high and ever-shifting expectations. I was the invisible daughter, the one who meticulously worked part-time jobs to fund my own college education, the one who relentlessly pursued scholarships through sheer academic grit, all while Caleb basked in a gilded cage of privilege and unearned luxury. That fateful Sunday dinner was the culmination of years of quiet neglect and blatant injustice. Father grandly announced Caleb's graduation with honors, even though I knew his grades were barely passing. Then, with a flourish, he revealed the gleaming new Camry parked in our driveway, a symbol of Caleb's unearned success. I stared at the car, then at Caleb's smug smile, and finally at Father's cold, unwavering gaze. The injustice was palpable. Later, Father turned to me, his face devoid of emotion. As for you, he stated, his voice sharp and devoid of warmth, it's time you started contributing to this family. Effective this month, you'll be paying $800 in rent. My mother, Eleanor, sat utterly silent. Her gaze was fixed on her dinner plate, a silent accomplice in this cruel charade. There was no protest from her, no flicker of compassion in her eyes. She had always been this way, a woman trapped, unable or unwilling to stand up for her own child for me. A cold rage began to simmer within me, not a fiery outburst, but a glacial, methodical anger that had accumulated over 2 decades. It was in that moment I realized I could no longer endure this existence. I could no longer be a shadow, an invisible entity, a convenient scapegoat for my family's carefully crafted facade of perfection. I decided then and there that I would leave. But not in a fit of weakness or despair. I would vanish with purpose, leaving behind an undeniable message, a receipt for everything they had taken. My preparations were meticulously planned and executed in absolute secrecy. I worked extra shifts at Sylvie's bookstore, Book Nook hoarding every dollar. I spent countless hours researching interstate bus routes, poring over maps and schedules, meticulously charting my escape. Each night, long after the household had fallen silent, I stayed awake compiling a mental list of essentials. My old but reliable laptop, Grandmother Constance's small jewelry box, which I now knew contained far more than just trinkets, and most critically, her battered old diary. I had safeguarded it since her passing, but I had never truly delved into its pages until now. On that final night in the house with everyone else lost to sleep, I sat in my room under the dim glow of my bedside lamp. I opened Grandmother Constance's worn diary. Initially, I simply sought solace in her familiar handwriting, a comfort in the quiet intimacy of her thoughts. But as I read, a horrifying truth began to unfold before my eyes. The diary pages were not merely personal reflections. Interspersed within her elegant script were meticulously copied financial documents. Grandmother Constance had detailed a significant trust fund she had established specifically for me. A substantial sum intended to secure my future, particularly my university education. But what was far more shocking were the entries expressing her growing apprehension about Arthur, my father. She had subtly but clearly recognized his manipulative tendencies, the way he controlled Eleanor's finances, and even to a degree her own. She had subtly warned me, urging me to be careful to protect myself and never to allow anyone to control my life or my destiny. I turned to the final pages. There was a partial photocopy of a legal document, but it was partially obscured. I couldn't decipher it entirely, but an unsettling premonition settled over me. The feeling of betrayal, already a bitter taste in my mouth, intensified. Armed with these chilling discoveries, I began to write my receipt letter. It wasn't an emotional outburst of accusations, but a cold, precise ledger of their transgressions. I meticulously itemized every contribution I had made to the family, the countless meals I had cooked, the hours I had spent working to fund my own education, the countless times I had cleaned up Caleb's messes. I wrote about how I had remained invisible while they lavished all their attention on my brother. And finally, I made my declaration. You will never find me unless I want to be found. It was a threat, yes, but more importantly, It was a profound promise to myself. I placed the letter folded neatly on the kitchen counter next to my house keys. It was precisely 4:11 a.m. I walked out the front door, my steps light as if an enormous weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I took a deep, invigorating breath of the cool morning air. A profound sense of freedom washed over me, tinged with a flicker of apprehension about the uncertain future stretching before me. My first destination was the next city over, where my godmother, Beatrice Sterling, resided. She had been Grandmother Constance's dearest friend, formidable woman, fiercely independent, and never afraid to speak her mind. I knew unequivocally that she was the only person I could truly trust in that moment. When I knocked on Beatrice's door, she opened it with a surprised expression, but her eyes immediately registered the gravity on my face. I recounted everything from my father's demand for rent, my mother's silent complicity, to the horrifying discoveries I had made in Grandmother Constance's diary. Beatrice listened patiently, her expression growing somber with each detail. Then she let out a long, weary sigh. "My dear," she said, her voice laced with concern, "I had always worried about Arthur. Your father. He has always sought to control everything, and money, I'm afraid, has always been his most potent tool." She then divulged how Arthur had systematically manipulated Eleanor's finances, rendering her utterly dependent on him. Then she confirmed my darkest suspicions. That trust fund your grandmother Constance left for you, he managed to access it after she passed away. He exploited your grief, my dear. He transferred funds from your trust into accounts he controlled, and a significant portion of that money was then used to pay for Caleb's university tuition. Money that was rightfully yours. My heart felt as if it had stopped. Not only had my father betrayed me, but Caleb was implicated as well. A deeper, more insidious sense of betrayal washed over me than I had ever known. Beatrice then handed me a card with an address and a phone number. "This is Julian Vance," she said. "He's an excellent lawyer, and more importantly, he's trustworthy. You need someone to help you reclaim what's yours, my dear, and you absolutely deserve to have it." With Beatrice's steadfast support, I met with Julian Vance, the lawyer. He was a man of quiet demeanor, but unwavering resolve. I presented him with every piece of evidence I had painstakingly gathered, the copies of Grandmother Constance's diary entries, the murky financial documents I'd discovered, and even my receipt letter. Julian meticulously reviewed everything, his expression grave, and began his investigation. In the days that followed, my phone buzzed incessantly. Texts from my mother Eleanor filled with a confused mixture of worry and bewilderment. Demanding texts from my father Arthur, brimming with rage, ordering me to return home immediately. And then messages from Caleb, initially angry, then increasingly frantic. "Where are you? Mom and Dad are losing it. Just come home." But then the news broke. Caleb was arrested for driving under the influence. The news spread like wildfire within the social circles my family had so desperately strived to impress with their veneer of perfection. The facade of the Maxwell family began to crack, the carefully constructed image crumbling, especially without me, their accustomed scapegoat, to shoulder the blame and consequences. A few days later, an unknown number messaged me. It was Chloe Davis, Caleb's ex-partner. She stated she'd heard about my sudden departure and wanted to speak with me. We met discreetly. Chloe confided that she and Caleb had broken up because he had become increasingly volatile and manipulative, eerily mirroring my father's behavior. Then she produced a USB drive. "This is a recording Caleb sent me one night when he was drunk and feeling guilty," Chloe explained. He confessed to using your money for his tuition, and he sounded genuinely remorseful. He also said his father had pressured him into it. That recording was irrefutable proof. Julian Vance now had every piece of the puzzle he needed. Julian Vance filed a lawsuit against my father, Arthur Maxwell, seeking to freeze his assets and suing him for trust fund fraud and financial abuse. The news sent shockwaves through my father's business circles. He was swiftly removed from his prestigious position on the board of the prominent corporation he had long controlled. His carefully cultivated reputation lay in ruins. I went to visit Caleb in jail. He looked utterly broken, remorseful, and finally vulnerable. For the first time in his life, he spoke to me with genuine sincerity. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "Father forced me to do it. He said if I didn't use that money for my tuition, he would cut me off completely. I was terrified of him." Caleb also confessed his profound dislike for the business career Father had relentlessly pushed him into. His true dream, he admitted, was to become a carpenter, a vocation Father had always disparaged. In that moment, I realized Caleb too was a victim, just like my mother, just like me. Shortly after my mother Eleanor reached out, she sounded weaker than I had ever heard her, but her voice held a note of genuine remorse. She asked to meet. When we did, she presented me with a small, worn box filled with letters. "These letters Constance wrote to you before she passed away," she said, her voice trembling. "Arthur hid them from you." I opened one of the letters. Grandmother Constance's voice resonated through the pages, vibrant and clear. She recounted how Arthur had meticulously manipulated her own finances and those of Eleanor. She warned me about the insidious danger of allowing anyone to control one's life. "Fight, my dear," she had written. "You possess all the strength you need. Never let anyone extinguish your light." My mother looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears. "You have to free yourself from him," she whispered, "and so do I." Eleanor confessed that she had decided to divorce Arthur. She had found a small apartment, started painting, and was attending therapy. She apologized for everything she hadn't done to protect me. It was a pivotal moment, a profound liberation for both of us. The final confrontation took place at the old Maxwell family house. I returned not for reconciliation, but for closure. My father, Arthur, sat there, looking withered, isolated, and aged beyond his years. I looked him directly in the eye. "You manipulated me, Father," I said, my voice calm but unwavering. "You stole my future. You exploited Grandmother Constance's trust. You hurt Mother and Caleb, all because of your own fear." And then something extraordinary happened. He looked down at the floor, then slowly, almost imperceptibly nodded. I was afraid of you," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "You were too talented. You had the potential to surpass me. I didn't want you to surpass me." It was the raw, unvarnished truth, and it was the moment he finally utterly revealed his true vulnerability. Ultimately, my father Arthur agreed to sign the settlement agreement. He was compelled to return the entirety of my trust fund, publicly acknowledge his financial fraud, and perform extensive community service. The old Maxwell house, once a symbol of manipulation and heartache, was through my efforts and Julian's legal expertise transferred to a women's shelter. 2 years later, my life had utterly transformed. I became a sought-after motivational speaker, sharing my story across the country. I also spearheaded a nonprofit organization called Second Chances, dedicated to assisting young people who have experienced financial or emotional abuse and manipulation by their own family members. I knew intimately that countless others were enduring similar struggles in silence. Caleb was in recovery, steadily rebuilding his life. He had embraced his true calling as a carpenter, finally pursuing his dream. He was diligently working to repay the money he had used one small payment at a time. My mother Eleanor was blossoming in her newfound independence. She painted beautiful canvases, and I visited her frequently. Our relationship was slowly, gently mending brick by brick. My father, Arthur, lived in a small apartment, still attending therapy sessions. I don't know if he truly changed at his core, but he no longer possessed the power to harm anyone else. Along this journey, I met Alex, an elementary school teacher. My companion is a warm, patient, and understanding individual who accepts me exactly as I am, scars and all. They are someone who truly understands and shares my values of independence and healing. My memoir, The Unseen Legacy, became a national bestseller. It wasn't merely my story. It was a powerful voice for countless others facing manipulation and injustice within their own families. I came to realize that disappearing from my old life wasn't an act of cowardice or escape. It was the only way I could truly become seen. It was an act of profound self-affirmation, a necessary step to reclaim my identity and worth. The old Maxwell House now stands as Constance House, a transitional housing center for women and children escaping abusive relationships. A place that once harbored immense pain has been transmuted into a beacon of healing and hope. Grandmother Constance. I know would have been immensely proud to see her name associated with such a transformative purpose. I had found myself, and I was never disappearing again. Sometimes disappearing is the only way to finally be seen. If this story resonated with you, or if you believe it might offer hope to someone you know, please consider sharing it. And don't forget to support more stories of courage and transformation like this one. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next video. Thank you for listening.